What's up guys, my name is Damian and welcome to the video. First off, huge thanks to the wonderful sound designers taking part in this project. This video was inspired by the so-and-so artist one prompt trend, but with a sound design kind of twist. Instead of drawing or painting, each of our participants will be redesigning the same video clip using the same microphone for all the source recordings, which is the Toucan. There are no rules, you can take it as far as you want, go wild with the processing, or keep it totally natural. The idea is to see how differently each person approaches sound. Along the way, participants will record a little breakdown of their process, showing what they captured, how they used it, and what inspired their approach. The main goal here isn't perfection, it's creativity, experimentation, and fun. This project is about enjoying the process, recording, designing, and discovering new sounds all together. So let's take a look at the clip we'll be redesigning.
Hey, hi, hello, my name is Presley, and I'm really happy that you're watching this video. I was really honored to be asked by Damian to do this to show off a little bit of his Toucan microphone. It's an amazing gadget. I love it a lot, and I've been using it a lot. So I'm really happy to show you this redesign that I did using only new recordings that I did with the Toucan. We'll play the whole thing together all at once at first, and then we'll go into details from there. Awesome. Oh, this was so much fun to do. Okay, we're gonna go break down layer by layer and group by group. Awesome. So like I said, these were all made just with the Toucan and things that I found around the house. I'll explain in a little bit more detail what those are later, but for now, let's just go through a couple of the different tracks and the effects that are on them. This next section is fun. I just called it WTF, and really it's just a bunch of strange noises. Next up are some bass layers made by slowing down some dog barks and groans. And some more mid layers with some packing tape. There was also this weird layer I made using more dog barks that just sounded kind of cool. And then lastly, some jaw movement layers using a spray bottle, some more dog stuff, some more packing tape stuff, and some door hinges. Basically a bunch of things to make it sound scarier. Awesome, so there's the general breakdown of all of the different layers that were used to make this, but I also wanted to highlight exactly what made these noises. Everything in here was just things that I found around the house when I was looking for inspiration. So, door hinges, packing tape, the dogs, a whole bunch of random squeaky things like a really cool drum stool that sounded pretty neat. My husband Ron and I had a great time looking around the house for all this kind of stuff, and I think it turned out pretty cool. So I'll show some videos first, actually, of the props in action. So this is just a roll of packing tape attached to my desk. And then you take your fingers and you go to the sticky side and you get some tension in it and you go. So there you go. There's how I recorded a bunch of this stuff. Like I said, it's just objects around the house, which I think is pretty freaking cool. And the Toucan did a wonderful job capturing what I needed it to. From here, I'm just going to let a video play that shows some of the raw recordings, some of them sped up, and then some of them slowed down, just so you can see what this mic can capture. I also hope it shows that you can get a lot just from regular household objects. Thank you again to Damian / Soundwich for putting this together. It was really fun to be a part of, and I really can't say enough good things about these microphones. I'd really highly recommend everyone get one. They're quite affordable, and they really do the job well. I'll play the final redesign one more time, and I hope you enjoyed.
What's up, everybody? My name's Damian. Here's my breakdown for my redesign of this clip. First off, we'll start out with the clicking layer, which sounds like this. So this is made up of a lot of different sources. A few were getting a really hot brick from the oven, putting it in some water, and that would be this. I just got a few seconds of that cool sound, but it really made the sound worth recording. For this second layer, I just got a juice box, and when it was almost empty, it made like a almost gurgling kind of sound, and that's this right here. This third layer here is just the same thing, just reversed. And processed a little differently. This next layer was me just putting tape on my fingers and kind of clicking it. So the main part of this layer is actually this source right here. This is a cut up water bottle being bowed with a cello bow, and there's 3 layers of it. And each layer is at a different pitch. So yeah, let's see what that sounds like. After that, I added 2 transients to match up with what was going on with the water bottle. I got a transient from the juice box and layered it with that. After that, I also printed off a 3D printed clicking fidget toy kind of thing. And that's what this sounds like. So the next layer is actually like a screaming layer that I did. Just alone, it sounds like this. And so a lot of the elements in there are a screen door. It was really screechy, so I just got up really close and recorded that. There's a few other things like I dipped my soldering iron in some water really quick to kind of get like a hiss sound. Um, I had some cardboard scratches in there. I just scratched some cardboard with like different tools and things like that. Here's what the cardboard sounds like. I just needed, honestly, just a kind of a base layer to really fill out the sound a little more. Here's that soldering iron I was talking about. And then I think a good amount of these items are all the screeching door. So obviously, a lot of that has a lot of modulation and a lot of things going on. Um, I sent some of it through like Whoosh and Traveler and things like that. This last layer here is just some more of the brick stuff. It's nothing special though. I really liked that transient clicky kind of thing that came out of it, but this was more like kind of like the soldering iron, just a little bassier. Lastly, I took Snap Heap and I sidechained it to a little bit of the frequency and the amplitude of that. So when I printed it out, it actually ducks when the transients hit. A little delayed, but when the transient hit, it dips and it goes back up and dips. And that way it kind of didn't interrupt the clicks. This next layer is more of the same stuff. It's kind of just the screen door again with modulation on it. And I just didn't want it to be modulated as much as the others, if at all. So I kind of wanted it to sit on top and add some of the energy back to what I lost with the side chaining. So here's what that sounds like. It's just two layers. So it's really low in the mix, but I didn't feel like it really needed to be shrill and that high endy, but I think it does add a little bit to it. For this layer, I actually just took a printed out version of the scream layer and just clipped it, distorted it to high heavens, and then I went in RX and declipped it. And what that did is it just added a lot of bass to it. So I kind of cheated in a way with some of the bass, but I think it works really well with it. So here's it alone. So I think it works. It's just um, a different way of going about it. So at this point in the redesign, it was all good. It sounded okay, but it didn't have as much character as I needed it to. And it really needed to have some more dynamics, something with some real character and some harshness to it. So I went out, I bought some dry ice, and I just put a bunch of metal objects against it, put it on metal objects, just really tried to get some cool stuff out of it. And this is what that layer sounds like. So you can really hear what it is when it's alone. You can definitely tell it's kind of dry ice metal, kind of source. But in the full mix, I think it just works really well, and it covers a lot of frequencies that were missing before and a lot of attenuation and things like that. So we can listen to a few of the layers by themselves just to kind of get an idea. For this last layer, I really just kind of wanted to add more dynamics to it. I've been really working on something that a few of my friends have told me about, and that's to not layer as much and play things on top of each other, but to try to like play one thing after another to kind of morph it into something else. So I know there's a lot of layering going on, um, and I didn't do the best at what I was trying to do, but I felt like the initial hit of each vocalization needed a little something more. So I kind of just added a few of the same sources, just kind of like accentuated at the beginning. So here's what that sounds like. So yeah, with all those combined, I tried to really learn from the experience and go from one source to another, back to that source, and then have a cool reverb tail or clicky kind of segment in there. And I think I accomplished some of what I was going for. I think it turned out really cool, and I think it fits the clip fairly well. So as far as processing goes, we'll take a look at the scream layer, and generally, my philosophy behind this was to just enhance the recording because it is an ultrasonic microphone, so it can be pitched way down. Um, so I really just tried to beef it up. I did a lot of pitch shifting on individual elements and things like that to just kind of create character within just the track. But then I also would take like Pro Q and automate the amplitude of it to go up and down on this um, high cut. So that way it adds a little more opening and closing to it. And then TR51 um, to just kind of like beef it up and get more body and this, that, and the other. Pro Q just cut out 20 hertz and below because we don't need that. Track spacer to just duck from a different track, some compression, and then some limiting. And that's kind of what I did with a majority of the parent tracks of them. Then on individual tracks, I'd kind of use unveil, unfilter to just really bring out the sound and put it right in your face. Um, Imager just to put it down the middle, easier to work with. Um, Pitch shifting, like I said before, more limiting. And that was kind of it. I really wanted to take the recordings, pitch them all down, and then really make it really vibrant, really colorful, and so you can hear the intricacies of the recordings. All right, and then we'll just take a look at the click track just to, get a better idea. Um, Click track, obviously, I used a transient shaper. I still use TR51 just to beef it up more, unveil, um, and more of the same. And then we can even take a look at the final processing of the parent track of all of the scream layers. I just used Imager. We did some format shifting instead of pitch shifting. TR51, beef it up more, some Gullfoss just to brighten it a little bit and give it a little more life, some limiting, Pro Q, and that's pretty much it.
Hi, my name is Tom Todia, and I am a sound designer. And today I'm going to be going over a redesign challenge that I did for this lovely looking creature that's on the screen right here. This challenge is from Toucan mics, which is an ultrasonic microphone. I have always wanted an ultrasonic microphone, just never was in the mood to throw down the amount of money needed to get one. And then Damian came along and made the Toucan mic. And I got one of the earliest production ones, and I have been using it pretty much daily ever since. So I'm excited to do this, and also excited to maybe learn something new about designing creatures. So first I want to just look at the creature together and talk a bit about the design process, and then I'll go over some of the clips that were recorded that I thought might work for it, and then a little bit about the breakdown of sort of the Reaper session and how it was put together, and a little bit about the thought process behind it. So first thing, whenever starting out in sound design, you always want to really get a good vibe for the character, the creature, whatever it is that you're designing for. In production, we often have, design documentation, maybe from whoever designed this, that gives a little of the lore, the backstory. Maybe it's already connected to the title that we're working on in some kind of way. But with a redesign challenge like this, you're kind of looking at a blank slate other than just what you see visually, which is also kind of fun as a sound designer because you get to come up with the story. So when I looked at this creature, instantly some of the noticeable things, right, is that it has this insanely tough exoskeleton armor suit that does not look inviting at all, right? This is a fighting character. It has a soft underbelly where you can see all like the pink stuff moving around. We want to pay off the shell, but you always want to pay off some of that more sort of wet, transient sound that might be coming from underneath. And then obviously you've got these pincher claw leg things making it look like an arachnid spider. And then most importantly, you look at these red eyes and this teeth and the mouth and the pinchers, and this thing is just evil. It could be alien, it could be, it's definitely hostile. But looking at it, to me, I immediately thought this is a demonic creature. This is a creature that maybe is possessed by evil spirits, and is certainly up to no good. So element-wise, I want to grab something that's going to represent pretty much all of those different factors. All right, so let's just put this on loop and watch it for a moment and get an idea of its sort of body movement and what it's doing. Okay, so it's being attacked here by some kind of projectile that comes from the left to the right. And then it looks like it gets hurt, gets thrown back, right? So it's very unhappy, leaps forward with an aggressive attack, and then some kind of really horrific scream would happen right there. So let's look at some of the elements that I recorded from this using the Toucan mic, and then talk a little bit about how they're going to be used in the session. So over here, in this other session, I have some raw recordings. These are unprocessed. They'll be shareable in the YouTube comments down below. And we've got a couple of things here. First, we've got me just making screams and different vocal noises into the microphone. Of course, this is all being recorded at 192 kilohertz to take the ultrasonic frequencies in the recording into process. And I also recorded at 32-bit, so we can really change the volume stage after the fact pretty easily. So there's got a little bit of human voice in here. Let's take a listen to this. So this area is kind of representing what might be the pain that the creature is going through after being attacked. And then some more kind of angry once he jumps forward, like the attack sounds down here. And of course, the fun about recording at ultrasonic is that you can change pitch or play rate in a more dramatic way than lower sample rates that you might be recording at with microphones that don't capture the higher frequencies. It allows us to keep some of the quality in the character with more extreme processing without hearing any of these horrible artifacts or things you don't want. So in this case, I have the play rate here in Reaper that I can listen to and just adjust and see what it does. You know, down at like 70% is always a good starting point. So in this case, this character to me is not like a giant character. We don't have any context. The character is in an empty space on its own. But I'm imagining this is more like human size to me rather than a really giant character. That's just the way that I'm seeing it. So in that case, we're not going to be doing a ton of slowing down of play rates to make something sound massive. But there will be some elements of that in there. And then I've got this elk call, this hunting elk call, which I ordered on Amazon for like $10. I always wanted to use, and I thought this might be a good opportunity for it. It's almost like an evil baby scream. Yeah, not pleasant at all, but there's some good content there to work with. And then I also got a duck call. This didn't make it in because it didn't really fit, but I did record it. It's just a little too cute for this character, no matter what I tried. However, a duck call I did find is a really good starting element if you want to speed something up and make it sound like a bizarre, almost alien baby or a creature that's very, very small and young. If I go up at like, 48% here. It actually sounds like a mix of a baby going through a balloon slowly letting out air. Okay, well, fun with the duck call. Then I've got this coconut rubbing together. So I took 3 coconuts and I would hold one, half coconut shells hollowed out, and then just kind of rub them together in front of the microphone to get the sound of the exoskeleton moving around as he jumps and moves backwards. And the thing about coconut shells I found is that if you have the open end pointed towards the microphone, the resonance is completely different than if you sort of close it off with your hand and dull it so it doesn't resonate nearly as much. So I got a couple versions of each. Back in this area is where it's actually closed off, so you hear less sort of echo coming out than back here. So that's going to be for the shell, the coconut rub, and then I've got some celery being broken here, which offers a little bit of sort of the wet, transient sort of noise that might happen from the pink bottom section of the creature. Add a layer of movement, believability under there. And then I recorded some cabbage cut in half and being ripped apart, basically doing something similar to the celery, but with a different tone to it. A little bit more rubbery, a little bit more of like movement of the pink underbelly. It's always fun to destroy vegetables. And then lastly here, we have the sort of the star of the show, which is Hank, our goblin dog. This dog sounds aggressive and crazy, like a cave troll on a good day. So we always get a lot of good content with Hank. Oh, and that's Hank at actually up by 48%. Let's see, this is Hank at normal speed. Great noises. And if we slow him down, say at about 0.7, that gives you the growl without the monster sounding massive. Ooh, that's a good one right there. It's like lung movement coming out. You always love that kind of modulation right there. So lots of fun stuff to play with, and let's take a look at the session and sort of how this came together and what we'll be doing with some of these elements. So we're going to look at a breakdown of the session here. Move the video off to the right, and let's zoom in for a moment. And track-wise, this is just the layout that I like to work with. A lot of people do, but there's a million types of track layouts you can use. This is just one if you're interested in following along. I like to keep my master track visible in the session at the very top of the session, so that I can see things like master fades or anything like that. In this case, I have some volume changes and play rate offsets as well. And the video is starting right from the very top. I have the video track pinned. I always keep my video track at the top, and in this case, Reaper just came out with this great right-click pin tracks to top of a range view. If you're not using that, it's a great thing to do, especially for your default sessions that you open up. So the video is up here, and then what I want to do after that, of course, is just kind of scan through the project and drop down markers or some kind of reference points where things I know I want to hit. So in this case, this is where the first impact hits the creature, the second impact, and then you've got things like legs touching the ground. In this case, I colored all of my leg markers green, just so they're easy for me to see. This is where the creature is recoiling backwards from getting shot. And here's where the creature is launching, where he gets some aggression vocals. So this is a great way to kind of map out and give yourself a sense of how you're going to progress from left to right, what main points you want to hit along the way. And then below, we have essentially all of the tracks. These are group tracks, so there's a bunch of content inside of them that we'll look at here in just a moment. On the master track, the only effects processing I have, it's mostly metering, but the black box analog HG2 is something that pretty much stays on my master fader all the time. Sometimes it's in, sometimes it's out. In this case, we're just passing right through it. And then I have my favorite limiter that I use and abuse, to say the least. In this case, it's the Brainworks True Peak limiter, and it's not really doing much of anything here except catching any overages and making sure we don't go past 0. That's really all it's doing on the master track. And then below the video track, I usually keep my my DSP channels, whether it's reverb or modulation or whatever, separated up near the top of the session as well. So in this case, I have 2 different reverb paths. One of them is this Bloom UVI reverb, which has really some nice halls in it. I wanted to use a short hall. This is only about 2 seconds, so that certain sounds just have a sense of space within this little empty world that our creature is in. And this humid hall has kind of a dark, it's not a high frequency reverb, so it fills in the background nicely with just a little bit of pre-delay, just so you hear a bit of sort of slap back, but only 32 milliseconds, so it's not going to be that noticeable. It just kind of makes things pull apart a little bit. And then there's a Verb Dark, which is essentially Eventide's Black Hole reverb, which makes some massive, giant reverbs. In this case, it's not the size so much that I'm interested in, it's just how wonderfully dark and in the background this reverb can be. So it's being used on a couple little moments. And then we have the ambience. Ambience is something that I just added in. Wasn't really part of the challenge, just to have the creature be in a space. You know, a little sort of eerie cave noise in the background. This thing looks like it probably lives in a really scary cave. So that's just to set a noise floor. And then under that, we have our first real sort of content track, which are these projectile impacts. At the beginning, the creature gets hit twice by something coming in off screen. So let's take a listen to that section. And you can hear there's some sort of phasey, flanging stuff going on there as well, just because, well, this could be a magical attack, you know, but it's something to make it stand out a bit in the background. And these are whooshes that I'm triggering with these MIDI items here from my favorite whoosh designer, which is this one right here, the UVI whoosh tool, excuse me. And what I love about this tool, there's a lot of control over it, which is really nice. But the duration of an actual whoosh here can be locked, which comes in really handy. So for instance, I'll drop a MIDI trigger down and then play with this until I feel like the timing is right. So there's the whoosh, part of it. And in this case, I found that about 0.7 seconds was the length that I really liked. So I'll start off by just sort of looping an area till it feels good. And then once I do that, I can drop this lock on. And now if I go through different whoosh selections or whoosh presets, each one of them will be locked to 0.7 seconds in length. And the same thing over here on movement. If you're going mono, stereo, or ultra wide, and if you're changing the Doppler and where the pass by is exaggerated, once you find all of that working, then you can lock that in too. And now I can make all sorts of changes, but I know my movement and duration time is locked against any new presets. And that's really handy. As well as the fact that you can select the noise and the two textures making up your whoosh and then manually draw over them in whatever way you want to. Actually, get rid of that. Comes in very handy for movement and coming up with different accents, and allows you to change sources for each one of those noise and texture sounds. So I'm a big fan. I use these often. In this case, there's two layers of it happening. And there's really some modulation tone on those, but I do like the way that they sound. And then we've got the sound of wood being impacted without a lot of debris, as well as some skeleton bones being hit because of the exoskeleton happening right here. And those just have very basic compression on them, that's all. A little bit of, say, 4:1 compression, and a semi-slow attack and a semi-slow release, really. So it's really just there doing very mild amounts of compression. So that is the projectile section, or the projectile whoosh and impacts going by. Those are source material, but now here on the exoskeleton, which I named this group Exo, this is where we get into the Toucan recordings. So let's listen to the exoskeleton first. And if you remember, we were rubbing coconuts together for the shell. We're breaking celery and destroying it as well for the pink area underneath the character that's moving around anytime a leg or the body moves. And then the cabbage also being rustled around in the same sort of way, which gives a more leathery, squeaky sound than the celery. You know, so the coconut shell is the hard shell, and then the celery and cabbage together are sort of the wet, gushy, transient noise of the body being moved from underneath. So let's just take a listen to this on its own. Let's hear that one more time. So what have we got under here? Well, there's two different areas under the main group. I have another group here that's broken down just for the shell itself. So take a look at this. And you can see these tracks are nested underneath as a group. And the shell is made up of the coconut, the celery, and the cabbage together. And those are basically happening. There's not too much going on here processing-wise. These are pretty much just right from the microphone, slowed down a little bit, about 13%, so there's a little bit more size and weight to them. And you can see there's some different enveloping and volume changes to make them all fit. But they're essentially happening anywhere that the creature is moving. And there's two little pockets here just before the big land happens, and then also right here, right here on this build-up before the leg goes down for the big stomp. And then another one here before he starts moving backwards, or it starts moving backwards. So there's a couple little pockets to give some room to breathe, but other than that, the noise is happening a majority of the time. So let's hear just these three. And the FX on those, all that we've got there is just a true peak limiter, but you notice here on the XL, I have this turned up to 100%. This is a saturation algorithm that Brainworks put into some of their tools, and it's just fantastic. It just adds a nice harmonic sheen on the high end without sounding harsh, that can help something stick out and really tame the transients in a very nice way. So that's the shell section. And then underneath we have the feet moving itself. So the feet are made up of a couple different things. The large pinchers, as they hit the ground, are made up of a number of layers. This meat chop sound right here is when the big feet movements, the big pinchers, the first one hits the ground and then the second one is shoved down into the ground. Let's hear this in solo. So you can hear there's also reverb. These are being sent up to both the dark hall and a little bit of that black hole reverb that I mentioned. And they also have a certain amount of bass pushy weight to them. That's because on these two particular ones where the heavy hits happen, I've added, the true peak limiter. Again, notice is at 100%. It's just hard to go wrong with this setting. And then I have the red bass or red bass plugin. This is a free plugin you can find online. Pay them if you're going to use them for very long. But I grabbed this, and it's just so much fun to use because it is essentially an oscillator that kicks out just some nice low frequencies to enhance. So in this case, it sees this transient and then this transient, and it fires a 50 hertz frequency wave, which 50 hertz sounds pretty low, 50 hertz, no pun intended. It is low, but down at 50, it really adds a room-shaking bass as opposed to 80 or 90 or 100 hertz, which with this type of oscillator, it can start to sound a bit musical, and that's not what we're looking for. So here's with it on. And then back off. Sounds good, but I really love the bass. Just gives the sense that this is important somehow on the dynamic side of things. And then to also accent those two big hits and the bass, well, they're hitting very hard, they're producing bass, that's the aggressive part. So we also want to hear a decay tone from this along with the reverb that's more dramatic than just the feet moving along without these big hits happening, right? So in this case, I have these tom drums where I cut the front of them off, and I'm just using basically the decay of the tom drum to accent the hits and make it seem like the room is really being excited by the pinchers going down so hard. Now those seem a little bit delayed, but that's because they're meant to be the reflection happening in this big space. But with the transient parts hitting, they feel right. Right, and then we have also some more accents down here. This is just a sub-marching sound, so it's a little bit of bottom end sort of papery noise underneath it. And then a few more accents here. We have these leather hits, which were recorded with the Toucan. It's basically big leather belt being smacked down on a paver, and that adds more accent of the pinchers actually touching or coming in contact with the ground. Here's them back here. And then we have some more leather belt hitting, same thing to accent the feet back here without any bass. And then we have our two whooshes for this section. So as this section goes by, so we have the landing, or the launching and landing, and then also the pincher being shoved down onto the ground. So for both of those, we're accenting it with a little bit of a whoosh. So in this case, this is the launch whoosh soloed out. You know, just to give a sense this thing's coming for you. And then we have this whoosh, which is when the creature throws his pincher down onto the ground. So you get the sense that there's enough movement to make that deep, bassy, reverberant noise. so there is the exoskeleton section. And then we have Hank's section. Hank, the goblin dog. And Hank, again, is being used for the low frequency reaction, or the guttural sound that would come from the bottom of the pink, wherever this creature's lungs might be. And it's made up of a few different things here in the beginning. Let's play this section in solo. What do we have for FX here? This one's got a little bit of processing. So for the group track, this is all running through some transient shaping to kick up both the lows and highs on the transient response. And then that's being run through this uber loud boom plugin, which is just a great tool for pushing frequencies in sort of a limiter EQ combination way. So in this case, I'm pushing, you can tell, a good amount of mids and a nice amount of highs, and then they're going through this character exaggeration, which is why you see the cracking in the background. And that's because Hank's voice is very low, and the play rate is also pushed low, so it sounds, rumbly and low frequency. And this brings out some of the mouthy parts of what Hank does and makes it jump through the mix a bit more. And then, of course, going through just a simple limiter, which also has that XL saturation algorithm that I love. You notice it's also up at 100. So let's listen to just Hank's voice go through this section here. Of course, you can hear some reverb, including that black hole reverb. That's that one that's really decaying off into the distance. And as well, some automation here as well. So this automation, where you hear that sort of chittering effect, where it sounds like the lung is breathing in and out, is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here in terms of the design. So what's really cool, and this is something that I just learned from David Farmer, who shared this little automation trick with the community online. This is so helpful and such a time saver now. So you can see I have volume automation opened up underneath Hank's voice here, and I'm on Windows at the moment, so if I hold Alt and drag along any area, it's creating a volume automation item. So he's got this little envelope created here. And if you open this, on the automation item properties, there's this really cool pooled copies section, which gives you an LFO envelope that you can apply. So in this case, if I were to grab, say, triangle, you can see now we've just got these huge gain changes in this triangle form. But we've got cycles and a couple other controls here. So if I increase the cycles, you can see, well, now it's going up and down very, very quickly. And also you can skew the amping, so it starts loud and then decreases in its intensity amp-wise. You can do the same thing with frequency. So you can start fast and have it go slower towards the end, or start slow and speed up towards the end. There's tilt on the volume, so it's focusing itself towards the end on the high and the low. Lots of controls here that make it really easy to get a very cool chitter effect happening very quickly. I'm going to be using this a lot moving forward because it's such a nice time saver to get this effect. And that's happening on all three of the clips, but much less dramatically at the front, because these first two hits are when the creature is reacting to being shot. So there's a little bit of noise, but it's almost like a painful reaction. And then when we get to the back end, where it's a launch and a scream like an attack, that's where the really exaggerated automation comes out. So that's pretty much it. The only real effects happening on these, besides this automation, is the fact that they're slowed down about 30% on the play rate. And there are a couple individual effects happening here on each take. Like on this one, I have more uber loud, so I'm pushing the lows and the highs pretty aggressively there. And what do we got here? Oh, exact same thing. So these were applied to each of them. So there's a lot of uber loud happening in this section. And I imagine this is the same one. Yep, this is the same one. So this whole section is being uber louded pretty loudly. Thank you very much, Hank, for your cooperation. And then the next section down is the voicing that I did. So in this case, we've got, well, there's a lot going on the group fader here. We've got this submarine waves processor, which is kicking up low end. It's basically a subharmonic synthesizer. We have the black box. In this case, it is turned on. And it's pushing a little bit on this pentode, which is going to give it a sort of a tape and tube saturation sound, make it poke out. And this air amount right here, it's a wonderful little thing. You just have to be careful not to go too far with it because it can get a little sibilant, but it's a really nice type of saturation. And then after that, this is all running through a tiny bit of plate, and I mean a tiny bit. It's up a few percentage points to give it some space. And then this Mag EQ, cranking up some subs, cranking up some low mids as well. Not too much on the high frequency there. And then, of course, we've seen this a bunch. True peak limiter raised up to 100. It's not really doing too much except clamping overages and then saturating the high frequency a bit. And then finally, a little bit of increased in the lower mids here from this final mix EQ plugin. And that's the master fader, the group fader that all these are going through. So let's hear this section as a whole on its own. All right, so like we said earlier, I've decided that this creature is demonic and is possessed. So that's what this creature is doing. Screaming, anger, almost a demonic sort of tone to it. And it's made up of 2 layers of my voice, trying to get some vocalizations and adding a little bit of voice box modulation to the creature. And then the elk call, the hunter's elk call, which is giving it the distorted, almost stuck in a void, hysterically angry, but also in pain sort of character. So the first track of me is running through this vocal synth also from Isotope. It's a mild amount of chorusing going on here, just to give it a little bit of otherworldly sound. It's not really that aggressive. Let's just listen to this track soloed. And if we to turn off the vocal synth. There's that great automation item again. And then there's a second layer, which is a bit more actual throat modulation in it to give the voice character. And together. And then third, we have this elk call. The elk call is also going through the automation item, and you can see it's starting mellow and getting more aggressive as we get towards the scream. And it also has a little bit of this phase distortion, just to over-exaggerate the upper mids especially, a bit more transient shaping, so it's kicking up the upper mids on the transients, and then running through Brainworks limiter, and this thing is doing really nothing but saving overages. I don't even have the XL turned on, which is sacrilege, but it's fine. So it almost sounds like you can feel bad for this thing in the beginning. It sounds like an angry baby that's in danger, but don't be fooled. This is a very evil character. So let's listen to this section together again. All right. Then the last thing that we have here is something I tried, and I'm kind of happy with it, but I have to play with it some more. This bass enlarge track. And what this is essentially is trying to enhance the low frequency information that's coming off of the mouth section. So I'll play this again. It's got good upper mids, it's got good highs, but it is a little thin on the bottom end. So to bring some of that out, what I have is this group fader, and on it, I have 3 instances of Bass XXL by Denise Audio. It's a really fantastic tool for bringing out subs or low frequency content. I have the first one dialed in like around 90 or so. The next one is up around 120, and then the third one is up around 200 in the boxy area. And all I'm doing is really sending some of the mouth Toucan section down to it, and It just brings the lower mid bottom section of this voice out a bit more if I mute it. And then let's hear it again. You really hear it on the first one. There's like a growl that it brings out, the bottom end part of it. So let's listen to the whole thing again just from the top. All right, and that is my evil creature design idea using the Toucan mic. And like I said, with the exception of the whooshes and a handful of things, pretty much everything in here was recorded using this mic. I use this mic pretty much every day, and I'm just starting to really get into creature design with it. So thank you for listening and checking this out, and I hope you do something similar and share it as well, because we're all interested in learning from you too. Thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. In the description, you'll find a link on where to find the Toucan and samples that we've decided to give away for free that we used in our redesigns. Thank you again to our participants, Presley and Tom. They've both been amazing to do this with. We hope that you had fun watching this video and learned a bunch. Thanks again. See you next time.